Film Club.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Harrison, and with me, as always, it's Andy Donaldson.
Hello.
Every week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us, and this week, we're taking a look at The Shining.
The Shining. Jack, Wendy, and their son Danny take a trip to a remote establishment, a remote massive building, so Jack can work on a book. That building's got a bit of a history. Devils of this establishment take over, and Jack take a turn for the worst and turn against his family. This is probably been my favourite Stanley Kubrick film.
Stanley Kubrick, 1980. This is him coming off of Barry Lyndon, I think, which we also covered
1980
in Film Club. Although I go back and forth on what is exactly my favourite Kubrick film, there is absolutely no doubt that The Shining is always in question because it is not just one of his best films, it's one of the most impeccably produced films, I think, ever.
It seriously is. I was thinking this is my favourite horror of all time, hands down. It's my girlfriend who can't stand horror. It's her favourite and she loves this film.
You can't stand horror.
So it just shows how good this film is. And it's a testament that it's based off Stephen King's book, The Shining, but there's a few things that are different. Stephen King himself said that he's actually not a huge fan of this, which is quite common knowledge, to be fair.
Yeah.
So it's got great source material, but then you got Stanley Kubrick behind it. You got Jack Nicholson. You got Shelley Duvall, who's fantastic as Wendy. You got Danny Lloyd, who's brilliant, and Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran. You have a production team, which, by the way, I didn't realise that they had the actual the creator of the Steadicam, because there's a lot of Steadicam shots in here. Him do it. Wendy Carlos, who works alongside Rachel Elkind to do the music. Wendy Carlos was one of the creators of the Moog, which anyone who does music knows what the Moog is. All coming together, culminating in this, what is an incredible cinematic experience, and one that every time I watch it just leaves me mesmerised by this beauty and this artistic quality that we see. It is a masterpiece.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned there also the inclusion of the Steadicam inventor, but we can't forget also John Alcott, who is Kubrick's at the time long-time collaborator. Shot Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, Space Odyssey, all that sort of stuff.
The editing is sublime. And it's the way it cuts from Danny to what we see. And it's I was saying here, it's like I don't want to know what Danny is seeing, but at the same time I'm so entranced that I need to know what Danny's seen, especially to know what actually happens at the end. Ray Lovejoy, who did the editing, it's just incredible.
I think everything works as well because Kubrick is firing on all cylinders at this point. Like, he's really got to the point in his career where his meticulous nature has become his style. Everyone understands what they're getting into with that Kubrick film. And he has now got the experience under his belt of things like 2001, Clockwork Orange, Doctor Strange, Love Lolita. Like, he's got a catalogue behind him. And I would argue that, and this I don't know how people feel about this, but I think that Stephen King doesn't like The Shining because he actually doesn't get it. I should clarify. He doesn't
understand Kubrick's interpretation.
He clearly understands his version of The Shining, the book that he wrote, but I don't think he understands what Kubrick was doing with The Shining, the film. One of the things that is clear that Kubrick wanted from his version was not just an everyman who's becoming sort of deranged and dropping into the bowels of madness. He wanted somebody who was already on the edge. He understood the medium a bit more than what Stephen King was thinking of. When Stephen King writes a novel, he's got pages upon hundreds of pages that he can play around with. I think that Kubrick was very clever in that he knew the boundaries of cinema. You have to compress storytelling in some respects, and the way in which the audience is able to interact with that medium becomes very important. At this time, Kubrick was learning and reading and getting very interested in subliminal information. The way in which
it's so good how he utilizes that.
Yeah, the way in which The Shining sort of communicates a lot of its themes and a lot of it's even some of its story structure is communicated through pure imagery that you, the audience, click together. It's part of the thing that gives The Shining that underlying uncomfortable feeling, because like you sort of alluded to earlier, The Shining is not jump scare scary. The Shining is deeply unsettling.
Yeah, what better example than the opening? It's the cinematic. It's almost like Fargo, but very ominous in its style. And then you have that just drony score that just leading you pacing into the intro of the film. You know what you're getting from the very start. It's a testament to Kubrick and his team.
I love the way he makes the Overlook Hotel feel like the maze that is outside. This overarching sort of looming feeling of the maze is going to do something, or the maze is going to be a character in the film at some point.
This is down to me as well. This had a budget of 19 million, which 1980 is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, and what this movie represents for a lot of people, it's actually not as high as I thought. It just goes to show what you can do with the money that's given to you, especially someone like a visionary like Kubrick.
That's really impressive, actually, that it's only 19 million, given that, like, reportedly the shoot for this went on for, like,
exactly.
Months and months and months, close to a year. I think on some accounts, people have said they were working on this.
The scene from the elevator scene where his blood comes out, apparently that took a year to actually get right because Kubrick was just so unhappy with it.
That's what The Shining is absolutely chock full of, right? It's chock full of scenes that have gone on to become iconic because of their quality. Whether we're talking about Jack Nicholson battering down that door with the axe, and here's Johnny, and the hell that Kubrick apparently put Shelley Duvall through. Whether it's him chasing Danny through the maze, whether it's all those little horror vignettes like the blood coming out the lift, and like
or even just Danny riding around in the car.
Danny riding around in his little tricycle thing. The bear who's filleting the guy in the suit.
Yeah.
Or it's the bathroom scene. Like, the whole film is just chock full of stuff that, when you think of impressive moments in cinema, you can pull not just one, not just two, but just a multitude of them from The Shining. And that's what's so incredible about it. It's a film that works on such a vast level that you don't wait for the good bit to happen. Every moment in the film is the good bit.
There's not many films out there, at least that have held in my head like the idea of mixing in a way that you cut in and out of the on-set dialogue, the sound effects and the music. And like I said, we were on about before, like those kind of electronic drones, the orchestral drones. You worked with a multitude of performers to make this sound that weaves in and out and just absolutely sends you discourse. There's a particular scene where she's looking at, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. If you listen to the distant strings in that scene, and then there's like a crawling of industrial cannons as like Jack approaches, and you have that amazing blocked shot of over Jack's shoulder towards his wife, and it's just like, oh my god, like audibly incredible and obviously visually incredible.
John Alcott, the cinematographer, is not only sort of applying some of the most incredible Steadicam work in terms of the environment that they're in, but he does one of my favorite things that I've seen in a horror film, and that's he takes the understanding of light and shadow and how those things operate in horror, and he completely twists it on its head. The Overlook Hotel is not dark, it's not dingy, it's quite well lit throughout. When you
look at the base.
He turns what normally we would associate with darkness into light. In The Shining, you're supposed to fear the light, unlike in most horror films where you're supposed to fear the darkness.
There's not much you can say other than just how amazing this film is. And for those that haven't seen it and you've got this far in a review, shame on you because, you need to watch it. But for those that have seen it, you will know how good it is. I'd be very, very interested for anyone who doesn't like this film, that's not Stephen King. I mean, Stephen King, if you want to join in, by all means. And comment below why you don't like it.
Too late, you've banned him. Stephen King, if you're listening, turn around, mate.
Shame. But that's it. I'd be really interested to see people who don't like this film and why. Because for me, it hits the nail on the head with what I want in a horror film, which is that slow building tension. Something more modern would be something like The Strangers. But where they have like the cheap horror and everything, it doesn't work. But just the scenes where you see Danny cutting with the girls and Danny screaming, no audio, and then cutting to blood, and then Danny again, and then cutting to something else. It's just terrifying imagery. That's actually, if you just put it on screen in front of you, it's not terrifying at all. Guy knows how to make horror.
I think you're right. It's difficult to say something that feels new about The Shining. It's difficult to say something that hasn't been said before because it's fantastic and everybody knows it's fantastic. So my recommendation to everybody watching is when you're done with The Shining, go home watch Stephen King's 1990s adaptation instead for TV.
Yeah, I've heard the same.
So there is The Shining. You can let us know in the comments below what you thought of The Shining. But Andy and I are going to be back once again next week, where we're not taking a look at a film. We're going to be celebrating our 250th episode with a special episode. So until then, get watching.
Cheers, guys.